and welcome to The Goat Show, where we talk about what's got our attention today. I'm Josh.
I'm Joe.
What's got our attention today, Joe?
Today, we're wondering, new music, does it suck, or are we just old?
Can it be both? No. I don't want it to be either, but I don't know about you, but I subscribe to an online music service, and I have a big CD collection. Music's a big part of my life, and the last number of years, as I've gotten older, I find myself listening less and less to new bands and new artists out there because I can't find anybody I like. And I was always wondering, is this me? You know, is the all the jokes that you hear growing up, and it's Sunny when I was young, music was, are they true? You know, does that really happen as you get old? You just get out of touch with music, or is there something different in the world of music today? And I don't get it, and it's good, but it's me. You know, is it me? Is it the music? What is it?
Well, and I think just like you said, we have, in some ways, our tastes connect. In other ways, our tastes disconnect a little bit.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Why don't you tell, what are your tastes in music? What do you listen to a lot of?
I mean, I listen...
Just so everybody out there understands where we're both coming from?
Absolutely. I mean, I was a child in the 90s, and I enjoyed my grunge and my rock, and I still, to this day, love Foo Fighters. Big fan of Rush. So I like my rock music, but I also, I enjoy the electronic, the techno, Chemical Brothers back in the day, Daft Punk, kind of all their stuff.
You listen to more techno and European stuff
Absolutely.
than I do. I think on that note, I'm a little older than you, definitely a rock guy at heart, but also a lot of blues. I have a jazz background in my playing, folk background from both my upbringing and music I like. I played in Irish bands. I was raised on musicals by my parents as well. So I've got a pretty big musical repertoire and knowledge and liking. I don't listen to nearly as much techno, if any at all, compared to you. Really, Daft Punk is about where I go in. I love them.
Yeah.
But that's about it. No country on either side of the mic here.
You know what? I'm gonna make a confession to you.
Yeah, I know.
And this is just between you and me here. That's the only people who need to know of it. But I started dating a country girl, and for better or for worse, I've started listening to. She's working at it. She's
lovely, and she is starting to twist you. I know.
And you know what? We've been talking about potentially going down for a trip down to Nashville. She's made a few trips in her life, and we're thinking about
Nashville's pretty awesome.
Yeah. So,
but you also, correct me if I'm wrong, you're listening to a lot of new country, correct?
Yeah. So,
and new country as its roots in blues, rock and roll.
Yeah.
You're not listening to Chet Atkins and Conway Twitty.
No.
You're not Grand Ole Opry stuff. You're...
Yeah. I mean, and
those guys can play. And those women can play too.
I'm not listening to... And this isn't like... I haven't switched to country station on my radio dial. I enjoy Chris Stapleton's new album, and I've been listening to it as a consequence of that. And I think this is another part, full disclosure.
We can still be
when
friends.
we talk about our streaming... Thank you. I appreciate the grace with which you took that news.
You know what? I'm a fan of the Dixie Chicks. I think they're great too. So I am not bereft of country, but yes, it's not on my playlist.
But I think we should also, let's call a spade. We both our online music service is Apple Music.
Correct.
So I used Spotify in the past. I think you did too.
I used RDO for a little while. I never used Spotify.
Okay.
I was always just...
I did RDO, Spotify, Slacker. I tried them all. I've landed with Apple Music right now.
And at the time when I was using RDO, and I think you're the same with the other people, again, disclosure too, we were Apple people behind the scenes in terms of, I had RDO, but all my other music that I had purchased was on iTunes.
Absolutely.
And my whole CD collection was uploaded to my computer systems, and that was all iTunes.
Yeah, so we're not proselytizing a streaming service.
Not at all,
we're
but just
so that people know. Yeah, exactly. And in terms of so when I talk about I'm getting a little bit more into country, I liked a few Chris Stapleton songs, so Apple Music thinks I like it.
They're popping up on your Friday list.
On my Friday new music list. I'm getting some more country, and I mean that's great. My Friday music list is a little bit all over the place, but one thing that I will say is I'm a person. I used to listen to a lot of music all the time. I switched to listening to a lot of podcasts when I do a lot of chores and things like that. So, and driving in particular. So now for me, my music listening is largely at work. And so I listen to music at work. So I'm listening to, I still listen to Foo Fighters and Rush and other rock bands, which for some reason other rock band escapes me right now.
There are no other ones.
But I do listen to that, but I also listen to a lot of like just stuff I can kind of ignore. So I'll listen to, house trance stuff. I'll listen to pop music even at work. And so I get a really broad spectrum of stuff. Well, really broad. I get a pretty good spectrum of new music.
Right.
And if you were to look at like the top 40 stations, that type of thing, some of that stuff's creeping into my feed. Not all of it. But so I'm getting possibly more exposure than you are to some of that stuff.
I mean, I don't listen as much as you do. I work from home.
Right.
So I don't sit in an office where I need to tune other people out or just concentrate on my own thing. I'm able to at home play the music I want to if I want to.
I love the people I work with. They're lovely and I don't need to.
And you have said that before, but still, it's different. I used to work in an office and I would often play music there too, just because it makes it your own.
Yeah.
At home sometimes I don't have a problem setting in sounds, but I usually do have music playing still, even if it's my own list, if it's not necessarily streaming. But further to our question then, if you're streaming a lot of new music, do you like it all? Because, and I'll further that with a sort of a secondary question. The listening of podcasts is obviously something a lot of people do. Part of that reason is, that wasn't an option before, right? You had radio and you had whatever's in your media player, tape, CD, MP3, whatever you were listening to. Podcasts are now another option, and they're a great option. And Lord knows we think that because the proof's in the pudding, literally as we speak. But because of that, it might be drawing you away from some new music too, or it might be introducing you to new music because you listen to podcasts about music. So with all of the different media people shoving new music in your face, what do you think about it?
So I think some music, I think it's like with all things, some things click, some things don't. Drake seems like a really nice guy. I don't get, his stuff does not connect with me at all. I've never really, I like some of Kanye's stuff. I still think Kanye was a much better producer than he is a hip hop artist, and that's just my personal, I'm sure that this is going to like, just our Twitter feed is just going to be like lit up with stuff, but like, and that's
so Drake's no Kanye's. What about someone like Pharrell?
But
who's in the same
boat? I really do enjoy Pharrell, and I like a lot of newer artists. I tend to lean more into the stuff that is more kind of the more dance, trance, not hip hop, R&B. Moving into that technical area of loops and hits. Just to be fair, I wouldn't say that I'm not a Taylor Swiftian. I do like Ed Sheeran. There's a guy who's considered a pop artist, although at the same time, I think he's got chops all around the spectrum.
I agree. The guy can play, absolutely.
Yeah. There's a really good podcast called Switched on Pop. And they do a really good kind of analysis. They focus exclusively on pop music, and I think sometimes they ascribe a little more credit to the music than is necessarily due in terms of intent. But they have a really great piece on Ed Sheeran where they start not liking him. So they had this guest on, Ross Golan, and he's fluent in the music industry, and he had a really interesting story of being on an award show and being in a kind of a green room or backstage with Ed Sheeran and a bunch of other guys, and Ed Sheeran just starts freestyling, and you've got this ginger from the UK who plays on an acoustic guitar, and I would argue that 10 years ago, 15 years ago, he'd be doing singer-songwriter stuff exclusively. Right. And instead you're seeing his album is all over. He's got stuff that could be considered hip-hop. He's got stuff that he uses loops, and he also has those kind of soulful ballads as well. But sure. And I like all of his stuff. So that kind of gives you an idea. I think there's some stuff there. I like it. I know that you don't have, particularly, let's face it, when you're talking about the stuff that you're not enjoying, a lot of it is loops, right?
That's not necessarily true. I never enjoyed that type of music. Okay. So, the thing that Ed Sheeran did on the Grammys this year, was that this year?
Yeah, it was this year.
That was, as a musician, that was impressive. So I'm a bass player, primarily, but I know how to play guitar and play piano when I started. As a musician, watching him do that was very cool, and using that pedal. And I can tell you in the music world, the day after he did that, there were people looking for what that pedal was and how can I find it, and it was brand new. So it sparked that interest from the musicianship community. The song he did, I didn't dislike it. It's just not my thing, and I don't consider that music that sucks. The MMVAs were recently on, and when I saw the ads for them, like any other ad for an award show, right? It's the MMVAs on Sunday. Stay tuned when featuring, and then they would list off a bunch of names, the people who are presenters or they're going to be there, and then there's a list of whatever 20 to 30 names, and then and featuring performances by blank. So in that 30-second ad, let's say they listed 35 people. I didn't know 33 of them, had no idea who they were, didn't like them just from the clips I saw of them, and the two that I did know, I did not like their music. I don't remember who they were off the top of my head, and it's not really important because that is that real high schooly pop scene, and that is not geared to me as somebody who is nowhere near that age anymore. And I understand that, and it was never meant to be, so that music, I think, to me, that music isn't good. And just because it's not geared to me doesn't mean I don't have to like it. I think in this day and age, too, there's not necessarily gearing all music towards certain age types. But the fact is, certain types of music are attractive to certain age groups sometimes, and sometimes, they're not. But that music, that poppy, those MMVAs, they're not trying to get me, and I don't want to be got by them. So that stuff sucks to me. But I think if I was talking to somebody in the music industry, they would say, great, I wasn't expecting your money anyways. The stuff that's in between, whether it's Ed Sheeran, whether it's Taylor Swift, whether it's, even people who've been around for a little bit while, whether it's Rihanna, whether it's Iggy Azalea, I don't think even that necessarily, does that qualify as new? That's not me either. I think there's a lot of music out there now. And that is one of the main differences. If you go back even to when I was in high school, let's say, and that's when the genres, so to speak, started to get pretty blurry. There was country and whatever, jazz and blues and pop and rock, and now that it had happened, the classic rock scene had started. We couldn't call it classic rock in the 80s because it wasn't really classic rock yet. It was just 5-10 years past. Yeah. But by the time the 90s hit, bands that are in my top 10, I always think of myself as a child of the 70s because lots of bands, my favorites, my posters were, Zeppelin's probably my all-time favorite band, and Hendrix and Boston and those guys, and Rush started in the 70s. All those guys, those are my favorite bands. Yeah. They were classic rock. That was starting. I'm also a metalhead, so 90s was the grunge time too. All those things, that's my people. And then there was starting to be a big divide into pop, which really started to grow and expand right after the grunge time was over. Yeah, pop took over, and music goes in waves, right? 80s was a pop time, right? And I think that this is a shout out to Alan Cross, sure, great Canadian radio personality, musicologist. I listened who you and I listened to as much as we could, especially in those times. Yeah, we listened to a ton of his material, and he talks a lot about the sine wave between peaks and valleys of, depending on where you want to put them, pop and rock or rock and pop. But the idea that music for a long time oscillated between the two. So, in the 80s you had, the 70s had rock. 70s, right. You had your rock, you had your disco, you had your... I wouldn't put those together. I would say disco is the bridge from rock to pop. From rock to pop, right. And then you get that pop in the 80s, and it swings back. And in the 90s, we had our grunge phase, right? Really deep into grunge and alternative rock and punk, Green Day and Offspring and some guys that used to be metal. Metallica with the Black Album brought metal to the forefront for the masses, so to speak. Exactly. So people who might not have been, even though they've been around for years, maybe you didn't know who Slayer was, and all of a sudden you went to see Metallica and Slayer opened. These guys are great, right? So then a whole new world of metal opened up. Yeah, and then towards the end of the 90s and into the early 2000s, like you say, there was a big opening into pop, and there's the boy bands, there's the girl bands, there's the pop stars, and I think also we should just contextualize. We're really talking about American music here. Correct. Right. Well, the music that we've been exposed to. Yeah, which is exactly. Yes. So North American music and British. Yeah. In certain Europe. That's true. Absolutely. Obviously not Indo-Asia and Asia in that area. It wasn't as big. So those bands we don't know, but these people who we're talking about, they toured there. They're absolutely big there. Absolutely. And so, but we're seeing that transition. And then I think both of us kind of were waiting, in the early 2010s for another swing, and that just doesn't seem to be happening. And I think there's lots of reasons if we look at it, right? Absolutely. Absolutely. I really feel right after those sort of that boy band Britney Spears era, there was a fracture, maybe for lack of a better term. Not a bad fracture, but lots of things started to change, right? The medium really started to change.
Absolutely.
So
The
growing up,
means of
getting
distribution,
music, right.
of getting music.
Growing up,
changed.
right? Yeah, I listened to lots of radio and had maybe one or two stations that I frequented the most. They were my favorite stations. They played what I liked, and they were basically a mix of classic rock and new rock. That's how I got 50% of my music information. And the other 50% was word of mouth from friends or going to my local music store. We had a great store here in the city where you and I live that had a huge selection, great prices, and people who worked there really knew their stuff. So, right? Oh, you like Red Hot Chili Peppers? You should be listening to this band called Infectious Grooves. They're also kind of pop funk and rock funk, and they got some rap in them too. Maybe you'll like them. And you did. And that's how it was. That was it. If somebody didn't suggest it to you, if you didn't hear it on the radio, or if you didn't have time to flip through the CDs or the LPs or the tapes in your store, you didn't hear about it. And then all of a sudden, MP3s happened.
Yeah, there was an
digital
internet,
music was created.
Yeah, there was an internet movement before, but it was very, very small, and bandwidth also opened up, right?
Well, the internet, the digital age started to become accessible to everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
In every aspect of arts too. So music,
no longer am I worrying about the 58K modem that I've got to take the phone line over for so I can get online to check a forum. Now I'm on my phone, or even before that, just on the computer all the time. It's not bothering anybody, and so you're looking things up, and you're getting like you say, MP3. When Napster was a thing, was the thing. Let's face it, it was download it first, decide if you like it after,
and then get rid of it,
right?
If not, or keep it, or then download. Oh, I like album 1. I'm going to download album 4, 5, 6, and 7 too.
Exactly. And before that,
I don't know why I skipped 2 and 3, but whatever.
No, they're never ending. You before that, like you go to the record store and maybe you go. I used to go to the whatever 2 for $20 shelf, right? And I'd look and I'd find the one CD I wanted, and then I'd find another one that looked like I might want it. And maybe if I was feeling bold or if I had extra time, I'd ask them to open it up and I could listen to it. But realistically, for the most part, you were buying what you knew you liked because that was serious. That was money that you were putting out. And then when you no longer had to do that, all of a sudden there was a whole range. You were really freed up to experiment. And then those doors kind of get shut, and it becomes. And that's not to say that music piracy isn't still a thing.
But in that age too, how many CDs did you have? I didn't interrupt you, but I had a lot of CDs. I had at least 200 CDs. Never mind the tapes I had before that. But out of those 200 CDs, there was a significant portion, maybe even a quarter, more than a quarter probably, where I listened to no more than really 4 tracks on that whole CD.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Because, the small percentage that I probably bought for one single, and I like this song and maybe one other song, hopefully so much, that you just buy the whole album.
Exactly.
Because I didn't have another option. That was it. That's all I could do.
And now that and in an attempt to close those doors on piracy, the music industry has moved towards a la carte models, either, by music stores like iTunes, which we were both early adopters on because we really liked, great high quality singles that we could purchase easily and
for
listen
a very
to
reasonable price.
Very reasonably priced. Or streaming services, which are even more reasonably priced. And I mean, now I'm not one to listen to music through YouTube, but I know that's a really popular way that people get music for free, effectively. But I mean, there's a myriad of options, and I mean, I know Spotify's like a big player in the scene, and obviously Apple Music is too because their app is on all their devices, and they're now more than ever. If I want to go and I want to listen to one song off an album, or those 3 or 4 songs off an album, for me to put together a playlist, or even just go and find that song and listen to it on repeat, that barrier to entry is very, very minimal. And I think it also kind of goes back to, just because I like, say, The Offspring, in my town, if I wanted to listen to The Offspring and I didn't have my tape or CD or whatever with me, I had to hope that they were playing it on the one radio station that played Offspring. Well, now it's not that anymore. There's satellite radio, but that's a whole other. In my opinion, I'm not really totally sold on satellite radio. I think it's kind of a niche thing for a niche group. If I want to listen to it, it's not so much that whether or not I have that ability. It's how I want to. And I as the consumer am now in the driving seat for that. And I think that kind of goes back to consumer control, which has been on the rise. has also kind of robbed a bit of the power for momentum to build.
Momentum of the artist or momentum of the industry?
Kind of both.
Okay.
I don't, not so much from the artist. I think artists can now build followings because if you're a metal guy and you get in the metal community, that word can spread really fast, which is great. But I think for the industry to be able to say, this is a star and we're going to make this person a star, or for someone to go to a club and be like, that's a really great rhythm section and I'm going to put them together with a singer and we're going to have a great band and that band is going to be good. And yeah, the public might not get it for their first album, but we're going to keep pushing them through.
Yeah, I think those days are long gone.
They're really, it is. And because for me to be exposed to something new, if I'm not looking for it, chances are I'm not going to see it, because I, as a consumer, am making that choice.
So what you're saying is 20 years ago, you're in high school, you were actively looking for new music because you had to.
Yes.
Right. You were passively as well, so you'd wait to hear it on radio.
Yeah.
Or somebody tell you, hey, listen to this. But if you wanted to find somebody new, you had to go look for it. Mm-hmm. So you had to, whether that was asking a friend, whether that was talking to somebody at the record store, you had to seek it out yourself. So skip ahead 20 years, and the world has certainly changed. The digital age has come. iPods are now into iPhones, and devices are everywhere. Streaming is everywhere. Now that it comes to you, you can just sit there and literally have new music delivered to your listening device every week, which is exactly what happens.
Absolutely.
Because of that, the quality has gone down? Or just as a matter of numbers, and that the selection is now so much more vast, right? So before the new music you might find, let's say in a 2-week time period, you might find 2 new people 20 years ago. Now in a 2-week period, you can listen to 50 new people. So is it just a numbers game, and that really always 20, 30, 80% of new music you heard sucked, but now that you're hearing 50 people, right? So yeah, 40 of them suck and 10 of them I like. Before it was 4. So it's just a matter of perception, or...
I think it's a kind of a combination of things. So like you say, being able to listen to more is definitely part of it. I think also there's the fact that there's something that happens when you listen to somebody that you kind of enjoy more than once.
Right.
So there's that song, and it's got a hook, and it doesn't really catch you right on your first glance. It's maybe not, perhaps it's in genres that you're not familiar with. Say it's country, and you would normally say, I'm never going to listen to that stuff. But then something comes along, and you end up listening to the same song or a group of songs in this area a few more times. And so this is the kind of thing that would happen because you'd have certain cross-pollination before, right? Like you say, the guy at the music store goes, look, I know that you're not really into this, but let me take you over here because this is really good, and you'll like this too. Or, the radio stations that would blend them together. Now, in theory, what's supposed to be taking that place is these new algorithms. Whether you're on Spotify or you're on Apple Music or whatever, everybody's pitching their algorithm. That's their special sauce that's supposed to get you through the door. Right. And what I'm finding, and maybe it's just because Apple's still kind of the new kid on the block and their algorithm's not as well developed, or I don't really feel like it's poorly developed, but maybe it's the learning curve. But I find the algorithms, and even when I was using Spotify, I was getting the same thing. They lean very hard into, you like A, well, I'm going to give you A slightly changed. Right. I'm going to give you slight variations on that, but I'm really not going to push you out of your comfort zone, because if you push out of your comfort zone, you're not going to like that, and you're going to push back.
So it's a twig off the branch, but not a new branch off the tree?
Exactly. Right. And that idea that there's no real need for me to explore other things or to support other things. If I don't like metal and I like rock,
then why would I push opera on you?
Exactly. And
or even why would I push pop on you?
Exactly. And if I don't have to listen to pop punk because I like punk anymore. Right. I just find punk stuff that I want. Right. And so then there's no need for me. Maybe something that is technically classified pop punk will appeal to that punk rock listener. Right.
I definitely agree. I think the suggestions I get sometimes, they're almost trying too hard, in that, you listen to, and I don't know how the algorithm can fix this. I think it's a work in progress. It's still relatively new technology, and I'm sure they're going to get better.
If there was a magic bullet, it'd be done by now.
Right. And I've heard people have had discussions with other people saying that they've been on Spotify, they've been on RDO, they've been on Apple Music, and they find that currently Spotify, they said, gives them much better suggestions than Apple does. And, I think Spotify's been in the longest. They have the most people, so they probably have the best algorithms. That logically would make sense. So maybe they're just, other people are lagging behind and they'll all catch up. But, I've definitely found, most of the stuff I listen to is in 2 or 3 genres. And then one day, for whatever reason, somebody says, hey, what was that song, when you were 20 and it played at that so-and-so's birthday party? And it is a song that is abstractly connected to nothing that I ever listened to. Right? It's the theme from The Muppet Show, which I love, by the way. But that type of kids music, as it would be categorized, would not normally pop up in my playlist. And all of a sudden, the next stuff they're suggesting is, here's a song by this group that is a new grunge group, and this is a new metal group, and this is a new pop punk group, and then here are 3 kids songs. Yeah. Because I listened to 1 kid song in the last 7 weeks. Yeah. I get 3 kid song suggestions.
Yeah, and it's like
guys, you got to be a little more look a little more. I don't need 3 kid songs. That's the anomaly. There's got to be a way to weed out that anomaly. As that happens too, you also get you listen to a kid song, so maybe you're actually 16, and you also want to listen to the latest pop sensation, who I don't even know who their names are, and that's a hard dislike. I think that's happened more than I'd like to admit, and that definitely that's new music to me, and that's where I get this new music goddamn sucks. Is it me?
As just a momentary aside, Amazon has that problem, and it frustrates me till I'll get out, because we're at an age now where we've got friends having kids. And as someone who doesn't have kids, I go to Amazon, I buy 1 baby present through Amazon, and all of a sudden, the next 6 months, I'm getting emails and prompts. Everything's like, hey, do you want another toy giraffe? I don't want another toy giraffe, Amazon. I bought it as a gift. Stop suggesting it. To go back, I think you've got a good point. And maybe part of it is really just that it's that learning process, right? As with any algorithm, an algorithm is only as good as the data it has to feed off of, right? So, that what you call a hard dislike, right? That's going to definitely kick back and affect your future recommendations, and that's a good thing. I find it interesting. I was just looking through, I quickly looked through my kind of new music for the week with Apple, which also is kind of it really should be newer music.
Right. Well, yeah.
It's not new music.
It's new to you.
It's new to me.
I think that's what it should be telling you, because some of it's absolutely old, and some of it, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that.
Exactly. But some of it is new as of a couple weeks or whatever. But anyways, so I'm just looking through, and I'm seeing I've got a song by Halsey on there. I quite like her. I quite like that stuff. I know that's something that you're not a fan of.
Yeah, it's not my style.
Which is fine.
I would, the other thing, sorry, just hanging on that thought and what we were just talking about with the algorithms, I also wish that it wasn't so black and white.
Yeah.
The kid song is a hard dislike. The new Metallica single is a hard like. The Halsey stuff, if it came up on my list, I don't, and again, we're just using Apple because that's what we both have. Yeah. But there's always basically a love or don't love. There's a yes and no.
Thumbs up, thumbs down, whatever.
Right. I don't mind the Halsey.
Yeah.
I wouldn't go out and source it myself. I wouldn't put it on necessarily a playlist that I have. But if it pops up on my new music list, I might not fast forward it.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll listen to it. I need that middle ground of love, no love. I can deal with it. Exactly. It's fine. I wish there was there, because that I think would also make the suggestions much better.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then they might be able to also to even subdivide. And here's a list of stuff we think you'll love. Here's a list of stuff we think you may like.
Yeah.
And that'd be great too.
Yeah. Well, and so just going back.
Sorry, I didn't mean to take you off your thought.
Two of the groups that were on my list. So there's group and an artist. So Seether. And it's a new single by them, which sounds a heck of a lot like Nirvana. It's Seether doing their best Nirvana impression, which is fantastic. I think it's great. And Tricky. And this song I really like. And if we were to go to my office and dig through the CDs that I still have, yes, I still have CDs. At some point, I don't know why I haven't gotten rid of them yet, but I still keep them just in case. But I have an old Tricky album that I got back in high school. Which Josh is snickering because that was a long time ago.
It's a sad snicker, just so we're clear. It's
but you know,
the good old days.
I think about these are bands who are putting out new music, and I'm like, that's great, and I'm enjoying them, and they're on my new music list. I'm thinking of this like when you're asking me, do I like new music? Well, yeah, I like new music. I got a list full of stuff that I really like, but then I go back and I think, well, but is this really new music?
It's new music from old, already likable bands.
Exactly. Like, now, think about something like...
so do you like what you like, or do you like brand new, right? That's...
Exactly.
That's always a question. Like, that's an age-old question. I don't know. We're not looking for an answer for that.
Even though Seether's doing a really great Nirvana impression, as I say, or as I've said it, I think... that's going to be new to them, and that's an evolution of them as a group, as an artist, right?
It counts.
Yeah, so I think we don't want to be too quick to say just because an artist has been around for a while that their music hasn't evolved. I mean, Rush is a great example. 40 years of music. You listen to their first album, listen to their last album. It's still Rush, but it's not the same.
Listen to every album, right? They've gone through their phases too.
Yeah.
So obviously, and I think that's a very fair point. Just because I liked somebody last time doesn't mean I'm going to like them this time.
Yeah.
And sometimes a band can evolve, and that's good. Sometimes they can evolve to a band you don't like.
Absolutely.
And that's bad. And sometimes they don't evolve, and that's also a problem. Mm-hmm. I know Theory of a Dead Man, for me, is a great example. Loved their first album. Mm-hmm. Pretty much loved the second album. But by the third one, it was sounding very similar to the first two.
Yeah.
So I was sort of expecting more.
Yeah.
Similarly, around the same time, Billy Talent, who came out, who I also love, absolutely love, they did evolve. Even though it's still that hard rock punk sound, they got better in my mind. Their albums did evolve. Mm-hmm. And even if it's slight, it was better. And I did like each album. I have them all, and I listen to them all the time. Recently, I think we had a great example of new music between the two of us, where you sent me a link to a band that was on your list, wasn't on my list. Mm-hmm. The band Greta Van Fleet, have you ever heard of them? Mm-hmm. If you like Zeppelin, if you like that 70s classic rock, these kids, I think they're from Chicago, if I remember. I mean, they're kids, they're teenagers.
Yeah.
And the kids got a voice, but they are actively trying. I mean, they make no bones about it. The way that they dress, and they present themselves, they're brothers, three brothers and one friend, I believe. Love them. Right there, that was a great example. That is brand new music. That is what's sort of old is new again. Mm-hmm. And it was a great example, I think, of this day and age, where, because there is so much out there, I think is sort of one of the conclusions we seem to be coming back to again and again. The quantity of new music is exponentially larger than it was 5 years ago and 10 years ago. I mean, it really is an exponential curve in its truest sense. Mm-hmm. And because of the exposure and the availability of that, it's almost now finding a needle in a haystack. It's not a bad thing necessarily. In retrospect, you are exposed to a lot more, and more is good. Exposure is good. Yep. You're listening to more, but inevitably, I think, especially when you reach a certain age, you know what you like. And you're not going to like new things. You're not going to necessarily... It's not a matter of teaching an old dog new trick, so to speak, but now that I'm, age X, I don't want to like anything brand spanking new. I like my stuff. I like what I like. How much more music can I listen to in a way? So throw something at me like this Greta Van Fleet, who is, to me, the most exciting thing about them is not what they sound like now. It's that, these kids, the way the world works now, as you said before, I never would have heard them in the 90s. They're teenagers, young teenagers, who may have been discovered by an A&R guy back then or an A&R woman back then, and the production team would have maybe put them in, touring around little clubs around Northwest the States, and maybe they get signed, maybe they have to change the band. Hey, you guys are great, but the guy who's playing the drums or the guy who's playing the keyboards he's not good if we want to swap in this studio guy, etc., etc. And maybe by the time they hit their third or fourth album, I might hear them, and who knows what they sound like then. Nowadays, you hear their raw, brand new sound, and I can now make one little mouse click or one little touch with my finger, and I can follow these guys now for as long as they want to stick around, and I'll hear them evolve. And if they're doing this now, I can't wait to hear what their next album is going to sound like. I think that's fantastic.
Absolutely.
That's progress. Yeah. It's exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. And just as a footnote to that, let that be a lesson to any new musicians out there, new bands, pick a good band name. Because if you pick a crappy band name and you decide you're going to change it, it's going to make it really hard for those people to follow you. So pick one that you like now and use that. Because I always think back to Dave Grohl at the end of the Foo Fighters documentary when he says, if I knew this was what it was going to be,
Right.
I sure as hell wouldn't have named it the fucking Foo Fighters. That's a thing that, again,
You never would have thought of.
You never would have thought of before.
When Dave was releasing that album that he's recording all the parts by himself, as he just said, he never would have thought about it. You know, along those same lines too, I think one of the reasons we have all this new music, based on what you're saying too about choosing a name and making sure that you choose the right name, that ties in part with the fact that anybody now, you can get great recording equipment for relatively inexpensive.
Yeah.
Get into your basement, into your little studio room, get into your garage, record something, mix it down on your computer with very good software, and for a very minimal cost and time, bam, you're on iTunes, you're on Amazon Music, you're got a video on YouTube, whatever you want. You know, I've got 2 nephews, both who are very, very gifted and talented musically. One of them today, he's 14 years old. He did a recording with his friend in his basement. He's a drummer, and he was playing keyboard, and they did a whole jazz standard. He bought a 12-track mixer, and he's got a little unit that puts it through his computer, and it sounds great. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, a talent aside, the fact is, in an afternoon, they got something up on YouTube. It's not the first time he's on YouTube, and my other nephew's already on iTunes with music he's written.
Yeah.
Whether it's good or not is relevant, and it's great, guys. But the point is, it was easy to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and again, that never would have happened 15 years ago, right? When growing up in high school, you couldn't do that. You had to, record a demo or get something out to a guy who knows it, and they send it to this person. Even to get on a local radio station, you had to get it to this person, and maybe they can fit in, and they won't pay you stuff, and blah, 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 and that whole dog and pony show. And now, you want to hear my music? Yeah, go to this website right here. Or go to iTunes, it's available. Go to Spotify, it's on there. Put it up. You can listen to it, and they'll no charge to you because you're already paying your $10 a month. It's fantastic. Yeah. It's a glorious age.
Yeah, absolutely.
But then you of course, you get people who suck too. You get all that crap. But the fact is, it's out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's the best thing.
Yeah. So I think that's a kind of a good place to look back on this question. We're looking at, does new music is there anything wrong with it? I think ultimately there isn't. There's a lot of it, and it's finding the stuff that we like and realizing that to a certain extent, maybe we are kind of set in our ways. Maybe we're just not putting in the legwork we used to find new stuff, maybe,
and at the end of the day, is that a bad thing?
I don't know.
I don't think so.
Well,
I'm not dissatisfied. Are you?
No, absolutely not.
So then?
I don't think either of us are ever sitting there trying to find something to listen to that we can't.
I'm never going to stop looking.
No.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I agree. I think you're right. New music doesn't suck, but we are getting old too.
Oh,
and both of those things aren't bad.
Yeah. Well, yeah. At least half of that.
Well, yeah, that's true. Yes, so true. Oh, life, damn you.
Well, you guys, let us know what you think. Are you digging the new music? Do you want something different? You can reach out to us at getoуратtention@thegoatshow.ca. Or you can always continue the conversation with us on Twitter or Instagram at getourattention, all one word. So thanks a lot for listening.
Stick around for the next show.